23.
23 years old. And he's spoken at the White House and done all these really cool things, but he's walking his passion. I would like, if you don't mind, to speak to the students about the importance of volunteerism, the importance of service, and giving back. If you don't, if you can.
Sure, no problem. Well, I mean, I think for each of us, service means something a little bit different, right? And it can look a lot of different ways. When I work with a group called the Bonner Foundation, and they provide scholarships to universities and colleges. And the idea is to reach out, especially to high-need students, and we provide scholarships for them to go through university, and they do service throughout their 4 years. And in turn, they receive basically full scholarships. And when we look for those candidates, we know that a lot of young people are coming in. Some of them are coming in with your traditional, they were with a Rotary Club or Interact for high school or something like that, and they did traditional community service and volunteering. In other cases, maybe they had a single-parent mom, 7 siblings, and their service was taking care of the kids at home. And so service can look in a lot of different ways. And so one of the things I really try to do is validate that and look at the different values or different forms of service that we can do. And seeing service, again, not as an output, but as a lifestyle, as an impact in a lot of ways. And I think for service, the nice thing about service, and maybe you could speak more to this than I could, but in the business world, as well as any other sector, it's highly valued. We know that the business world now is looking for applicants who have experience in innovation and commitment and in leadership. There are few better opportunities to do that than in the field and service because there's a large need and there's a lot of room for talented young people like you to play a role. And so I think that service can play a really important role, and I wouldn't say as a resume builder, but as a skill builder, as giving you that opportunity to really tackle some tough challenges. A lot of times, if you can do it in a community around all the challenges that they have there, you can do it just about anywhere. At the same time, service is also an opportunity for you to be able to express your gifts, as well as to be able to carry out a lot of our personal needs. I mean, I find for me, when I go to a new country, I'm not going to help the country. I'm not going to change anything or to improve a community. I find that would be verging on arrogance to assume that would be my role. What I go is with a goal to make 2 friends. So to have 2 friends in Rwanda that I can call back on. And as we build that relationship together, we can build a more purposeful sense of service together. So we start to look at that partnership, and I get a clearer vision of what that country is in need of and what kind of partnerships that they could look for. And then the service builds off of the foundation of strong relationships. So I think there's an incredible role for our generation. And I think our generation is bringing a lot of new energy. And this is, again, where business can come in for business students. And that how many of you have heard of the concept social entrepreneurship? Anybody? A few of us. This is something that's really taking place in our generation. And I think that's because in a lot of ways we've been frustrated. We've been frustrated with the way society has been dealt with, if you will. Around the FDR era, we had the New Deal, and that created huge public programs with a lot of funding and social welfare. And then that became institutionalized. And then around the Reagan era, you had another change, which was in the opposite direction. It sort of decentralized, instilled the values of capitalism and free enterprise, and for those things to be able to really be able to meet the needs of our communities. I think our generation is largely saying we're not completely happy with either of those. We're not happy with the old school systems of social services, maybe that worked at one time but aren't working for us now, or the public institutions. And I think our generation is also saying that we still feel like there's an important role for us and for programming in our communities. So we've come up with these, we've really put a lot of fire behind this concept of social entrepreneurship and being able to bring the industriousness, the ingenuity, the energy, and the entrepreneurship integrated in business practices, but apply those to what some of us would call the double bottom line. So not just the for-profit, but looking at the other profit, changing communities in the world in which we live. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for all of us to really bring our energy, bring our own skills, and make this happen, make it move forward.
Do we have any questions from our Butler guests who are here tonight? And if you would speak in the mic so that this is being videotaped. And so I don't remember who the organizer is from Butler, but I will send the video stream out as well. Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, it sounds like you kind of grew into your role of the youth empowerment and service because you were involved in it as a youth. So for those of us who didn't have that background and are interested in getting into it, how would you recommend getting involved? Like, would you, get into government, get into nonprofits? Like, how do you even begin?
Yeah, sure. Good question. The question of how we get involved in things that we do, sometimes you're right, it comes through our own personal experiences. A lot of people who work in runaway and homeless youth programs, for example, were formerly runaway and homeless youth, and then they became a street outreach worker, and then the group was impressed with them. They moved on. They became an executive director, a middle manager, and so they flowed from that experience. And so then the question is, well, that's great for them. That explains their involvement. But then, what about the rest of us who still think that's an important issue, but don't know what our in would be? And a lot of that happens through things like this, networking with people who are excited about the same things that you're excited about. I can guarantee you in the Indianapolis area, there are people who are talking about these ideas. There are people who are talking about youth engagement. It takes a little bit of research sometimes to figure out which programs are out there. Do what we call community asset mapping. So you go out and you look at the resources and the things that are going on in your community. And then you figure out what matches your talents, what matches your gifts, what sets a culture that you're interested in, that you think you can thrive off of, and to be involved with that. I could always plug you into large websites or large organizations. For example, idealist.org is probably one of the largest. If you haven't been on that, both whether you're looking for employment in the social services or nonprofit, or whether you're looking to volunteer, it's got loads of opportunities on idealist.org that you can look up. But a lot of times it just starts, again, with those relationships, building contacts in your community. And in Oxford right now, one of the things that I'm actually not doing any volunteer work for a specific program in Oxford, but I have done a lot of work with homeless youth here in the U.S. We have 1.6 million young people in our own country that go runaway and homeless every year. I don't know if you know that. It's a pretty daunting figure when we think about the wealth of our country. In the UK, even in Oxford, which is a traditional, rather posh kind of city, they have young people who are begging on the streets. And so being the kind of quasi-street outreach worker I am, I sat down next to one of them named Lottie. She had a little dog named Jake. She was 21 years old. And as it turns out, Lottie she was a beggar on the streets. A lot of people ignored her. But she was in the foster care system growing up. She was molested, abused in the foster care system. She ran away, understandably, and long story short, she ends up on the streets, and so you can see the spiral there. And so Lottie and I started talking. We built a pretty good friendship. So now I'm working with her on a resume, and she's kind of introducing me to other homeless youth in the area. And actually came out to my cross-country race not too long ago. And so this sort of relationship building that hasn't been in anything formal. And sometimes we think we have to go through a formal channel. And sometimes it's efficient to do it that way. But sometimes it just starts with treating young people as they are, as human beings, and to talk with them, to listen, and to understand, and then to see what their input is, and then to act off of that. And so for them, we're just doing this little campaign of getting resumes written for them, even though they feel like they don't have skills. But in truth, like Lottie or Amy, they've done housekeeping, they sell these magazines, they've done these different things that they do have skills, and it's just a matter of identifying those, putting them on paper, printing them out, and then pushing them forward. And so sometimes, I guess the message in that is just that it doesn't always have to be as complicated as we think it does. Sometimes it can just start with a conversation with a young person or two, and then to see where it moves.
Thank you to everyone who's here that's helped out with the event. And then more importantly, thank you, Matthew, for joining us and spending the day in Indianapolis. And we hope you'll come back whenever needed. Butler University is represented here, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and there's probably at least, IUPUI, Kelly School of Business. So I imagine the word's going to be out about Matthew Morton. So let's give him a great big round of applause.